3, 2, 1, top. Allumage P120. Décollage.
In 2025, the European Space Agency celebrates its first 50 years, but it's not a time to rest on its laurels. ESA is busy with missions to other worlds, new rockets, human space exploration, a Mars rover, and in the next decade, even the first gravitational wave observatory in space. I am Dr. Alfredo Carpinetti, IFL Science senior science writer, and to mark this special occasion, I had the chance to speak with ESA astronaut Luca Parmitano, discussing his experience at ESA, in space, and even under the sea.
My name is Luca Parmitano. I'm a test pilot, an experimental test pilot for the Italian Air Force, and an astronaut for the European Space Agency. I've flown twice to the International Space Station, the first time in 2013 with expedition 3637, which is also called Mission Volare. And then I flew in 2019-2020 with my second flight to the International Space Station, expedition 1661, of which I was commander. And that mission was called Beyond.
I would like to ask, how do you even prepare to go to space, both mentally and physically? What are the usual thing, or maybe some things that are unusual that an astronaut needs to do?
Well, I don't know what is usual or unusual. I can tell you a little bit that there is no specific mental training. We are already selected according to certain criteria for our adaptability, flexibility, for our soft skills, or in general, desire to learn new things. And that is really all the mental preparation that we acquire. In terms of physical, we constantly train on the ground to be ready for a long duration flight by essentially getting as fit as we can and as capable as we can to use the machines that we have in orbit. What am I trying to say here? The space station, when you perform a long duration flight, you have to physically train every day in order to prevent your body from degenerating. It can be dangerous and deleterious both on a cardiovascular point of view and on an osteomuscular point of view. Your bones and your muscles, they want to slowly or relatively quickly degrade. There is a degradation that we understand. So we have 3 machines on orbit. One machine that allows us to run. It's basically a special treadmill with a harness system. We have a bicycle system, a static bike trainer, and a machine called ARED that allows us to actually perform weightlifting in a weightless environment. But in order to correctly use these machines in orbit, first you have to be proficient on the ground. You can't just show up and start weightlifting without having done it on the ground. So from a physical preparation, we actually train most days. We either run, bike, or lift weights. We also swim if we like to, anything that keeps our fitness high. There is also another part of physical preparation, which is all our simulations. In the first part of the training, trying to get ready for a flight, we do a lot of classes. Just like now, sitting with a teacher in front, going through a system, learning. But then once you have a good basis of theoretical knowledge, you start applying that knowledge into an environment which simulates what you're going to do in orbit, be it the simulation for the launch and landing, emergency situation, the International Space Station, a spacesuit underwater, and all those activities are very physical. I know it's a very convoluted answer, but the beauty of my job really is that it comprises many different things, and you have to juggle a lot of different capabilities. Maybe you don't become a master in anything, but you become really good at doing a lot of different things.
What was it like being and working in space? Was it different than you expected? or you were, by the time that you were ready to go up there, you had a good idea and it matched your expectation?
It's hard to say because I don't know that I had an expectation. I didn't know what to expect. I was wondering, will I do a good job? Or maybe the question was, please don't let me screw this up. That was more the thought, both on the ground before launch. I was the pilot for both my flights. And, you have a lot of procedures that you have to follow, that you have to execute. It has to be done on time, correctly. For me, it had to be done in Russian. So really, it was, don't let me screw this up. Whoever is up there, don't let me screw this up. Luca, don't screw this up. So that was for most activities, you just don't know what to expect. And then I was surprised by at least two things. One thing was how similar to the environment that I found was my training. It really prepared me. When I got to the space station, I was not surprised. It looked like something that I was familiar with. I went straight into all my activities, both experiments or maintenance or physical training. All those things came really relatively fast because I knew what I was doing. But on the other hand, there is nothing that can prepare you for the physical sensation of being weightless for an extended amount of time.
And you spent over a year in space in total, which is quite a lot, and you even conducted 6 extravehicular activities. How was experiencing space outside of the ISS?
Well, it was really freaking awesome, if you ask me. I mean, that's the fastest way I can explain it, is that to me, as a young kid, dreaming of being an astronaut, the image of an astronaut was either somebody flying a spacecraft or somebody in a white spacesuit outside doing something. So those were the two images in my mind. Mixed with a little bit of Luke Skywalker and Japanese cartoons. So when I was selected to perform Spacewalks, I was really excited. I mean, that's the easiest way to say it. Is I was excited. I was I felt so privileged that I was going to have a chance to do it. And I have to say, I still feel the same way. It is an amazing privilege. Not every astronaut get to do a spacewalk. There is really no way to describe the difference, but one thing that I usually say to people is, if you have seen one of those very large and realistic aquariums, for example, with those beautiful corals and also the tropical fish. So you have colors and life and motions and a lot of things, and they are fascinating. I mean, I honestly could spend hours just looking and trying to capture all the details of an aquarium. But then, if you go to the Caribbean or to the Red Sea and you dive in the water, things are at the same time different but more real. When you dive under 20 meters or 30 meters, maybe the colors change. Maybe it's not as bright. Maybe it's not as clear. But you are in the element that you're looking at. And the difference between being on the International Space Station looking outside and being outside immersed in the element, it has the same kind of components that I just described.
That was a wonderful analogy. I love that. Do you have a particular memorable time in space? Was that an EVAs or maybe something else that you've done in your mission?
Well, if I wanted to tell you all my memorable experiences, I would probably need 366 days. Any moment spent in space has its own absolute value. It's just precious that way, and unique and valuable. And to be honest, after having lived that experience, I learned not to take anything for granted. So even my time on the Earth now, I try to make sense of it and to give it to give value to anything I do. I usually tell kids nothing is more important than what you're doing right now.
That is a great message. I will pick a couple of your activity in space that I thought were quite memorable, at least from an external point of view. You've taken really cool selfies while doing EVAs. You've been DJing a party in Ibiza from space.
Everybody, ciao. I am DJ Astronaut Luca today, European Astronaut Luca Parmitano from the European Space Agency, and I'd like to welcome you on board of the International Space Station.
So you've done a lot to connect the Earth with space. So why do you think is important to have that connection, to make people aware of the space above us?
So I have this feeling that you can have the greatest adventure. You can have the most impressive story, adventure, event. But if you don't tell that story, if you don't share it, it never happened. And it's something that I've seen where we had incredible discoveries, and we have changed our understanding of the universe. We've gained access to knowledge that was unthinkable before. And I'm talking about the space agencies all combined, But we're not very good. At times, we're not very good at telling those stories. And so I took it upon myself that at least I have no expectations of people coming to me and being interested in my story. Because that would be the equivalent of feeling like you're on a pedestal and everybody comes and looks at you like some kind of superstar. And it is not my expectation. My expectation is to come down from space and tell my story individually. I want to talk to the 5-year-old in kindergarten. I want to talk to the 10-year-old in elementary school. I want to talk to the teenager in middle school, to the high schooler, and then I want to talk all the way to their parents and their grandparents, and I want to involve them into this story. The story that I can tell is my story, that of the European Space Agency, the Italian Space Agency, why we do what we do and why it's important. Now, that said, if I go to a teenager anywhere in the world and I tell them, my name is Luca Parmitano, I'm an astronaut, the most common reaction is that of a teenager. So what? And that's expected. And I know, because I have 2 daughters and they were teenagers and they still are teenagers. And so what is an answer that I get quite often. So instead, I thought that the only way to really connect is to find their language. And for some people, music is their language, is what captures their imagination, what captures their desires and their lifestyle. And so when they offered me the opportunity to do a DJ set from space, I thought, well, I've never done that. I'm probably going to screw it up, but I'm going to give it a chance anyway, because why not? If I have 5,000 people that have never heard of the space station, and only once in their life, for just 5 minutes, you have somebody that tells them there is a space station. There are people working and operating 400 kilometers above your head consistently for 25 years. You didn't know that, but now you do. And here's some music. Maybe that will work. The selfie was also a popular way of talking about yourself. So I didn't want to talk about myself, but I took one picture that had been done many, many times, and I took it without showing my face. I put down the visor, the golden visor, the helmet, and I took this selfie, and then through a very complex system, I sent it down to the ground, and I published with the tag, "This is the craziest selfie I've ever taken, something like that. I don't even remember. However, it was picked up by one magazine that put into ranking that, because selfie became the word of the year, it put into ranking a bunch of different selfies. So there was the famous one at the Academy Awards for the Oscar nights with all the actors taking a selfie. There was one selfie with President Barack Obama, something like that. And then there was my selfie, because I used the word and I published it online. It was me with the background of the Earth and in the most uncommon place to take a selfie, and my picture. So again, what was the point? Not to talk about me, but to tell people, those people that are looking on the social media about cool news, hey, we have astronauts on the ISS. There is an ISS. There's a small community of people that live and work up there.
I'm gonna take you down to Earth and a little bit below sea level. You also participated in the Nemo mission and became an aquanaut. How was the experience compared to being an astronaut?
Let me say, first of all, that I really loved it. I could have stayed much, much longer. It was a 2-week experience underwater. It was absolutely fantastic. And it reminded me a lot of being on the space station, because some of the things that you run into are very similar. The close space, the culture between the operators and people, some of the problems that you have, privacy, food, the closeness of everything around you. Everything is small, everything is cramped. You don't have fresh air. But then you look out the window and you have a giant grouper, a Goliath. Actually, it's called a Goliath grouper, that came to visit us every night. Looking with curiosity through the window of what we were doing, and then we would go out. We went out during the day. We would spend 3-4 hours outside doing science, looking at corals, analyzing them for the Florida International University. We performed experiments. We used some equipment that was underwater for the first time. So how did it compare? It was completely different and very close at the same time. It was a different environment. It felt like being in an alien world, or actually it felt like being the aliens in a world that had its own life and environment, which is also the same way I felt about being in space. I was the alien in space, and I had my spacecraft or my spacesuit to protect me from that environment in which I am the alien.
If tomorrow you were offered a trip into the oceanic abysses or a flight back to orbit, which one would you pick and why?
I would definitely pick the flight to orbit, or beyond the orbit, as a matter of fact, anywhere in space, because that is my job. And so even though I'm extremely fascinated by the oceanic enterprises and the exploration, just so you know, just for as a number, we have explored, I think, less than 30%, I think around 25% of the bottom of the ocean. And that's only in the past 15 years. 20 years ago, we had explored 4% of the ocean. And the bottom of the ocean is 2/3 of the surface of the Earth. So there is a lot to explore. There is a lot to understand about what lies underwater, and not only underwater in the seas and the ocean, but also underwater in those lakes that are underground, which we have never explored. So super fascinating, super interesting. But my job, what I've trained for, where I can really contribute with my expertise, is spaceflight.
I have just one last question for you, and is if there is one message, one thing you'd like to tell the public, what would that be?
Usually I finish with this message. It's true that astronauts tend to be very visible as ambassadors of the European Space Agency. But in order to become an astronaut, you need a lot of support from a lot of people. One of the classes of astronauts from the NASA is called the Turtles. It's called the Turtles because when they were being selected, somebody said, when you see a turtle on top of a post, you shouldn't ask yourself, how did it get there? You should ask yourself, who put that turtle on top of the post? So astronauts are like that. We don't get to do anything on any of the incredible things that we get to do by ourselves. We are put up there by scientists, engineers, medical personnel, communication personnel, safety experts, people that work on our food, people that work on the transportation, people that work on our facilities, people that clean our facilities. Being an astronaut means being in the position to give 100% of your capability in your job. For all of those that are fascinated with space, we had space for all of them in the European Space Agency, regardless of their background. We want the best and brightest people to work with us to create a future where science, technology, and exploration make life better on Earth.
And I think that was a great message to finish on. Thank you very much for your time to talk to us about your experience as an astronaut and more. Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.